Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today we're going to go back down the rabbit hole that is miRack. Today I'm going to show you 3 different techniques for loading kick drums inside of your projects. But first, we're going to check out this super cool patch that was sent to me by Spidericemidas. He's a friend and an iOS sound designer. Come on, guys, let's get into this.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Before we get started today, guys, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you're new here. On this channel, I talk about everything from modular synthesis with iPads to sound design and making tracks with iPads. We talk about new gear, we talk about old gear, we talk about making live jams, all that good stuff. Be sure and subscribe, guys. Oh yeah, you know you want to help a brother out and hit that subscribe button. Look, I'm so close, only 17 away. Hit the subscribe button. Now, miRack has an amazing system for sharing patches, guys, and you can email patches to one another, and I want to show you a little bit about that. This is the patch that Spider sent to me, and here it is attached to my email, and if I click on that, this is what happens, okay? It gives us the option to straight download this patch, which we're going to go ahead and do, and then we're going to click open in. And here's the thing, if I scroll over here and I click directly to copy to miRack, it will open up inside of miRack, but then when you close that session, it's not going to be saved in your browser. So what you want to do to make sure that when someone shares a file with you, it gets stored in your iCloud and your browser, is instead of copying to miRack, you're going to click Save to Files, okay? And here, let's see. This is by default going to give you the option to put the file into your iCloud drive, your Dropbox, or on your iPad. What you want to select is you want to select your iCloud drive, and then you want to navigate through your folders of your iCloud drive, and you want to find the miRack folder, right? You're going to open that up, and you're going to click Add. And it's going to, at this point, let you know that I'm replacing a file because I've already got it in there. But if I didn't have it in there, that wouldn't show up. And now, that file is just in our browser and ready to go for us when we open miRack. Let's switch over to that app, guys. And now when we load the app, it'll just show up inside of the browser. Here we have Spider's first patch loading up. And we're going to check this out today, guys. I want to encourage you that if you've made something interesting inside of miRack and you'd like me to share that with others on the channel, go ahead and email that to me. I'm going to put my email address here. It's junebug@electronisounds.com. If you'd like me to show something that you've created in miRack, go ahead and send that patch over to me in an email, guys, and I'll share it on the channel. We're going to start with the same project that we worked on yesterday. So if you've missed my first 2 tutorials on this, I'm going to go ahead and put some links up in the corner here so that you can get all caught up to where we're at currently. Now, with the beauty of modular being, personal choice and all that, and all the different modules that we get access to inside of miRack, we're going to go ahead and start with the easiest option first today, guys, for loading a kick drum. We're going to go ahead and press the plus button to add a new module. We're going to go over to tags. We're going to scroll down to drum, and we're literally just going to choose this module from AutoDAF. I don't know if I'm saying that right, AutoDAF, and we're just going to select that and bring that into our mix. The very first thing we need is to put a trigger signal into the trigger in of this, and there are several ways we can do this. We're going to do this the easiest way possible today by just taking the trigger out. We're going to patch that right into our main clock signal. We're going to take the output of this, which is literally just the volume of this module, and we're going to patch this into our second mixer channel. And now, if I press play, we're going to hear the ARP playing that we've already worked on. And if I start bringing up the mixer channel, whoops, sorry about that. Let me zoom in a little bit here. This is why I suggest the Apple Pencil. Some of these controls are a little bit small and can, easily be, kind of sausaged with your fingers per se if you don't have an Apple Pencil. What we can hear right off the jump is that the kick is going too fast. Da, 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 da. So we're going to go ahead and scroll out again, and I'm going to remove, scroll out again, and I'm going to remove the trigger in from that clock signal. You might remember from the earlier episode when we set up our first clock that our ratio is set to ×4. Let's go ahead and grab the main output of this clock and put it in the trigger in instead. See what happens here. Now, we're getting a 4 on the floor kick drum. We didn't need to use a sequencer or anything like that. All we're doing, guys, is just taking a signal trigger from our clock and sending it in to this kick drum here. Bring up our ARP again. This is the reason why we inserted a mixer in the very, very beginning, so that it gives us the ability to add other instruments, as we keep expanding the patch, and then just, mix those as we would with any other mixer. So this module here, guys, for loading a kick drum actually has samples in it, and it's a sample of the 808 kick, a 909 kick, CR78, mini pops, Lindrum, Alesis HR16, SP12, and a DMX. You get the drift, and you can choose whichever kick drum you want as long as this is running. And we press the little dot up here at the top. I prefer that 909 kick. It's a lot fatter and beefier and louder than that 808 kick sample in here. This is just one of the ways that you can get a drum going inside of your sessions, guys. Let's explore a second way to get a kick drum. This method is very similar to the last method, except we're going to be loading an actual oscillator today instead of a sample-based module. We're going to go ahead and click the plus button, and we're going to choose the macro oscillator, which is basically the same oscillator that we've got for our synthesizer. So I'll just put that there for now. What we'll do is if I scroll, bring the volume down so we don't get overwhelmed here, and we just, move the edit, and we scroll through these different waveforms. As we get quite a ways in here, there's going to be one that says kick. We'll keep scrolling, and there it is, kick. What we're going to do, guys, is we're just going to take the clock from our main clock, and we're going to run it into the trigger input of this kick drum module here now. We're going to take the output of this, and we're going to route it into our second channel on the mixer, and we're going to turn that volume up. We're going to turn this volume up here, which is our main mixer output. And here we've got a very basic kick drum. And now, if I zoom in, we can actually do some adjusting to this sound, whereas we really weren't able to do much adjusting to the sound in the last example. We can adjust this timbre, or the color, or the tuning. Maybe the coarse tuning would be more appropriate here. Maybe a darker kick with that color. Maybe bring that timbre down a little more. And there we have it. Now we've got a kick drum coming out of this oscillator, guys. Let's jump into this third method of getting a kick drum into our project, guys. If you've been following my channel for any amount of time, you probably know that as a sample maker, samples are a large part of my workflow and something that I definitely like to include in my projects. And that's what we're going to be concerned with now, guys. We're going to go ahead and load a sampler, and we're going to load a sample into that sampler, and then we're going to sequence that sample. We'll start by clicking the plus button at the top of the screen here, and in the tags section, we're just going to go ahead and scroll down until we get to the sampler page. We're going to go ahead and load the quad sampler at this time. This is a really straightforward and easy to use sampler. I'm just going to sort of put that over here for now. Again, where you place the modules on the rack is completely up to you, guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a clock signal, right? We're going to put that into the trigger input. Let's zoom in here. We're going to put that into the trigger input on the quad sampler. If I press play, I can now highlight the one-shot button. You'll see it turns a different color when I highlight that. And that's going to turn the sample into a one-shot mode so that it's not trying to loop the sample or do anything extra with it. All we have to do is just double tap on the little window here, and it's going to give us an option right here to open a wave for slot 1. You can load 4 different individual samples into the quad sampler, and you can sequence them. Let's see here. What we'll do, guys, is we're going to go to On My iPad. I have most of my samples stored inside of the Beatmaker 3 app, so we're going to go ahead and navigate there. We'll go to Imports, and here's my Electronisounds folder, where I have some folders with my one-shot samples in them. We're going to be loading a kick drum today from the Velvet Carbon Techno one-shots, and let's go into the drums folder and scroll down a little bit, and then we'll just pick one of these kick drums. It doesn't really matter if this is just for the purposes of a tutorial. We're going to grab this one here, and it's just going to load that kick drum right into the sampler. What we'll do, guys, is we're going to go ahead and take an out right here from that sample. It's an individual out, okay, from each sample, or you could take a summed output of all 4 samples coming out together. I find you get a lot more, control over what you're doing if you take the sample out individually. I'm going to bring the volume down on that before we hit play here. And now, what you might notice is that that's a huge stomping kick drum, right? I spend a lot of time when I make my sample packs and really put a lot of effort into the sounds, in creating the sounds. Certainly one of the reasons why I like to use my own samples inside of an app like this. I don't know if you can hear that at home, just how beefy that kick drum is in comparison to the other ones that we were scoping out today. I highly recommend, if you guys need some sounds to work with, especially one-shot sounds, that you maybe check out some of my sample packs on Electronisounds.com. It's also a really great way to support the channel, and I put a lot of work into creating those sounds. The one-shots we'll be able to load into the quad sampler and sequence the same way we're doing here. Now, what if you don't want a 4-on-the-floor pattern, though? What if you want to actually be in control of what the kick drum is doing? Maybe you want to create some, broken beat drums instead of a 4-on-the-floor pattern. Let's go ahead and insert a sequencer, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Before we insert that sequencer, guys, I just want to show you how cool this module is here. If we zoom in on the quad sampler, you'll see that we get all sorts of controls. The speed control, when you're in one-shot mode, is actually a pitch tune. So I can make, I can detune that sample, and if I pull it far and far back to the left, it starts to actually put that sample in reverse mode. And now we're playing the kick drum backwards. This is really over the top for sound design and neat stuff to explore, guys. As I bring the speed up, it raises the pitch of that sample even more, you see? So you can really sort of fine-tune where you'd like the speed of your sample to sit and really get a nice control over the actual tone that's coming out of it. But let's go ahead and insert a sequencer so we can make our own custom patterns for the kick drum rather than being really bohemian about it and just taking a clock trigger. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and click the plus button, and we're going to scroll down to sequencers here. Now, this is definitely the beauty of modular. You've got all sorts of options for what you could do to actually sequence your tracks. There's different sequencers here. Some of them are trigger sequencers, and some of them are more, melodic sequencers. Excuse me. We're going to grab this 6x32 trigger sequencer, and we're going to load that one into our mix. We'll go ahead and grab the sampler and just drag it next to that. Maybe make it a little bit easier to focus on. And what we're going to do is take the trigger that we've patched into there. We're going to undo that. Now, the sequencer is going to need something to tell it what tempo we're at, so it knows, what clock to work at. We're going to go ahead and grab, let's see, the clock from the left here and patch that into our main clock output, and I'm going to press play. We're just going to verify that we're running at 16th notes here on the sequencer, and we are. So that's good to go there. If you wanted this to run at a different, tempo, if you didn't want this to be 16th notes, if you wanted it to be half notes or quarter notes, you would just take a different clock output and adjust the ratio there until you're getting the speed to your master clock the way that you want it to be on this sequencer. We're going to take the trigger output for this lane of the sequencer, and we're just going to drag that over to the trigger input on the quad simpler. It's real simple, trig to trig, okay? Now, this is going to act as an XOX style sequencer. Anytime we put a dot in, it's going to put a trigger and sequence that kick drum. So here's how that works, guys. We'll put one in on the downbeat there, maybe one on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, so maybe one here. Boom, boom. Definitely getting a little bit of a click here as it plays the sample and cuts off the one before it. I'm not really sure how we could get rid of that little clicky thing there. Clicking the gate did not seem to help. But for now, what we could do, let's see if we click that again, what we could do, this sequencer here has different colored dots, which you can assign here, and then get different CV outputs with those. But and I hope I'm doing this correctly. If not, then, sorry. We're going to go ahead and click these again and remove all the other dots. Whoops. I see, that's where the thing is, the playhead is currently. Go ahead and put one there and remove this one here by clicking it again. Click these over and over again until they go through the cycle. Now we've gotten rid of that kick, but we certainly, are back to a 4 on the floor pattern, and we don't have the click. I said kick, I meant click. We've gotten rid of that click. Let's see if I can. Yeah, so as long as your sample seems to play out for the majority, you're not going to get that click. But you heard in the beginning, we were definitely getting some clicks there. I'm, definitely a modular newbie. There may be a way to get rid of those clicks that I don't know about at this time. But you can definitely use a sequencer like this to just use the trigger and put it on the next row. On the next sampler slot, use the trigger, put it on the next sampler slot, and put this trigger on the final sampler slot, and then load any samples you want here. Keep in mind, these could literally be any samples you want. That's the beauty of a sampler. These could be vocal samples that you're throwing in over a groove that you've programmed. These could be, 4 different chord stabs that you're running through tons of reverb and delay to make some really custom dub techno sequences inside of miRack. What you load into the sampler, is completely up to you, guys, and how you use it and how you sequence it, completely up to you. You can even load loops in here and get those to play back. You can mess with the start point and end point of the sample and do modulations and get super wild with all of this type of stuff. I think, it's all about that experimentation, guys, and, trying just to see what happens when you connect things maybe you don't know about. This is why I highly suggest that before you start your work for that day, that you back up your session, as I showed in yesterday's video. I hope you guys have found this useful. Start loading some drums into your sessions, guys. And I want to remind you again that if you create something really neat inside of miRack, shoot me an email with that and I will share it on the channel. Thanks for watching, guys.